Greetings. Greetings, everyone. It's Angela Robles. If you're live, it is 12 noon Eastern Time on a Wednesday. And I did kind of a part one to this 2 weeks ago called Useful Villains. And as I'm seeing things play out in New York, in the US, and really around the world, and absolutely, this ties into the world of entrepreneurship, finance, and family offices. I think I have a unique message that is very important that I would like to share to my viewers and listeners. I gave it a simple title, One Honest Hour, a companion to my Useful Villains from 2 weeks ago. In Cambodia, they killed you for wearing glasses. Not for resisting, not for hoarding, for glasses. Because glasses meant, God forbid, that you actually read. And reading meant that you thought. And thinking meant you might one day ask the single question the system, of course, could not survive. Where did, in my example, the food go? So they shot the readers first. Yes, we're going back in history, but this is what happened. A quarter of a nation died in 4 years so that no one could stand above anyone else. Oh, they sure did achieve the equality. It was the equality, in my example, of the grave. But Cambodia, as a communist country back in those days, does not hold a record. Stalin declared war on the kulaks, the peasants whose crime was owning a cow and being good at farming. Millions were shot, starved, or shipped to the frozen edge of the map. And when Ukraine's harvest was seized at gunpoint, millions more starved to death in the richest farmland in Europe. And then Mao broke Stalin's record. The Great Leap Forward produced the deadliest famine in recorded human history. Tens of millions dead in peacetime by policy. Totaled the century's ledger, and serious historians arrive at or near 100 million humans. 100 million. Not from war, from an idea implanted sincerely by people who promised fairness. That idea has a name, and I intend to use it on you today because the people selling it have not learned, well, they've learned not to. It's communism, not late capitalism critique, not economic justice, communism. And its patient younger brother, socialism, which makes the same promise, runs the same arithmetic, and differs chiefly in how long it takes to reach your property. The most lethal idea in history of our species, and of last month, the fastest growing brand in American policies. It governs the largest city in our country, New York. What, about a week and a half ago, its mayor told 8 million people what temperature to keep their homes. 2 weeks before that, its candidates swept New York's congressional primaries and are now bound for Washington in seats, well, their party does not lose. Here's what I find remarkable about that, and it is the whole reason why I'm here. Many of you are the most professionally suspicious, that's the word I was looking for, people on earth. No founder, no fund, no idea gets $1 past this room without an interrogation. Yet the one idea with a 9-figure body count and the one currently being pitched to your grandchildren by professors, politicians, and it feels like half the internet has never received from you so much as an honest hour. Today, it gets that hour. I'll call this like section 1, act 1. The man who never built anything, Begin the way you began everything. Who is asking, and what has he ever built? Karl Marx never met a payroll. He never made a product, never served a customer, never employed a soul. He spent his life in a library composing an indictment on the factory system, who's living while living on money from Friedrich Engels, whose fortune came from his family's textile mill. Savor the arrangement. The founding documents of communism were financed by factory profits. Capitalism, just think about it. Capitalism paid for its own prosecution. And this is not a biological curiosity. It's a whole pattern discussed at the origin, repeated ever since. The market produces the surplus, and the critics live upon the surplus, upon that surplus, while composing, of course, the case against it. 2 centuries on, only the wardrobe has changed. Put the first meaning question to today's pitchmen. What have you built? What have you built? We could probably just start there. Not tweeted, not organized, not majored in. Built a product, a company, a service that one free human being paid for it because it improved his or her life? The answer, with rare exceptions, is nothing. A striking number of the movement's rising stars are privileged children who pass their 20s marinating in resentment at expensive universities rather than making anything anyone wanted. The fiercest critics of a Jeff Bezos have never created a dollar of value for another person, never taking an entrepreneurial risk, never felt the 2 a.m. weight of knowing that 40 families eat because you do not, as an entrepreneur, get to quit. They don't hate wealth because they understand how it is made. They actually hate it because they don't. And a man who has never created value possesses no framework for a man who has. So he reaches out for the only theory that resume permits. Honestly, it's theft. It must be theft. And once it believes it's theft, everything he or she wishes to do becomes justice. So let me name the real fault line in our age, because it is not rich against poor. It is really builders. It is builders against takers. The entrepreneur confronts a problem and asks, what can I create? What can I create that solves this? The socialist confronts the same problem and asks, whose property must I seize to administer it? One produces, the other confiscates. One requires customers. The other, in the end, requires policing. You would not fund this founder. You would decline the second meeting as an entrepreneur or family office. Your grandchildren are being asked to fund him with a civilization? Act 2, the equality of the grave. You've heard the catastrophes in my opening, the kulaks, the famines, the glasses. I'm assuming you know this. Fairness obliges me to note that the idea has already been tried under the gentlest possible conditions. And I want you to see what happened, because it happened here in the United States and it failed honestly and miserably. Indiana, 1825, rich industrialist. What was his name? Robert Owen. Purchased an entire town, christened it New Harmony, and erected the model socialist community on American soil with hand-picked believers. No private property, equal shares, the best intentions that money could buy. Well, I guess you're asking what happened. It collapsed in roughly 2 years, not from drought, not from enemies, from arithmetic. Part of the community worked hard. The rest discovered that the food arrives regardless. What do you think happens to the people that worked hard when they see that? So when effort becomes optional, therefore effort becomes rare. And the people carrying the load did the mathematics, and they rightfully so departed. Equal reward for the man who breaks his back and the man who watches him is a proposition that cannot survive years with contact with simply human nature, biology, even when every participant initially volunteered. And here's the small and large, the entire story. New harmony is what socialism does when it cannot force you to stay. Cambodia is what it does when it can. The only variable between the commune and the killing field is whether the exits are open. Because the pitch is voluntary, and the system never is. The social contract composed to win your vote is rewritten the day power is secured. I guarantee you. And no draft has ever contained an exit clause. You may vote your way into communism. History suggests, well, how do you get out? You have to shoot your way out. Some 100 launches of this across 2 centuries. 0 graceful exits. 100 plus million graves. And where the customer testimonial should be. No allocator alive has seen a record with a continent that's that bad, because the capital flees long before the 100th failure. This idea persists in a single trick, honestly. It's never asked to survive scrutiny. Again, it's never asked to survive scrutiny. It is graded on intentions in perpetuity by people who would not extend the courtesy to a nephew asking for what, $50,000. Act 3, what I call the alibi. At this point, the sophisticated defender reaches for their alibi. It's almost always the same. Norway, generous welfare, contented citizens. You see, socialism works very well. Well, let us exactly read that alibi, because alibis are where pitches go to die. Norway actually is a capitalist country. Private property, private companies, open markets, a stock exchange. That correction alone should end, quote unquote, the discussion. But press on, because actually it improves. Norway, by the way, is 5.5 million people. It's tiny, homogenous. It's seated atop the greatest hydrocarbon jackpot in history. They drilled it, and what do? After they drilled it, well, they sold it. Sold it, mind you, to a world that runs on the very energy their admirers despise, and banked the winnings into, what, a $2 trillion sovereign wealth fund. Several of you know that fund invested professionally. So do you want to know where a large majority of it, the Norway Sovereign Wealth Fund, is invested? Drumroll. In us, the USA. The Norwegian People's Fund is among the largest shareholders of American capitalism on earth. Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, you name it. The entire index of companies that socialists propose to dismantle. The engine of Norwegian generosity is a portfolio of American enterprise. Their welfare state does not refute American capitalism. It is long American capitalism, $2 trillion long. And who pays the domestic bill? Everyone. That is the clause the pitch omits. Norway levies a 25% VAT, value-added tax, on nearly everything an ordinary citizen buys. The waitress pays it on her groceries. The pensioner pays it on his or her shoes. There is no just tax the rich because, well, there never is. There never is. And where's the innovation? even in countries that try to combine such an extreme social safety net, quote unquote, with capitalism. Like, I don't know, since Europe, well, I do know. How many companies new since 1972 have even made, I guess it's the Fortune 500? I think it's like zero. Zero. Look at the top 10 companies on earth. Look at the vast majority of companies in the Fortune 500. Entrepreneurship, striving for excellence, equal opportunity for sure. It's not equal outcomes. I've had some outcomes in my life that were very, very harsh and hard. I don't play the victim. Weak people think the world is against them. Strong people don't give a you-know-what if it is. No one really cares about your problems. This is also the reality of the world. We could argue a little bit sad. Our mothers care about us, building of our families, I hope our communities. But this is a reality of the situation. Commit this to memory as a law of the universe. Socialism takes from everyone. The rich are the sales pitch, the middle class, the revenue model, and the whole comfortable arrangement matured for decades beneath an American security umbrella, invoiced, of course, to the American taxpayer. I didn't even mention, of course, the burden of NATO that the US takes off a lot of these quote unquote more trying to balance between socialism and capitalism countries in Europe, which feels like a wonderful museum that is not creating the way that other parts of the world, mainly in Asia and of course in the US, and is trending down the road from a variety of different perspectives that is going to have a very, very negative outcome. So the honest description of the alibi, a small, oil-rich capitalist trust fund with punishing taxes on everybody. Oh, unlike in the US, where what? The bottom 50% contribute like 3% of the tax base. The top 1%, about 40%. The top 10% in the US, about 70% of the income tax base. Like in no. In Sweden and Norway, whether you make $1, that money's being taxed. And I could argue if you're going to have an income tax system, that probably actually is the fair way to go. But we don't even do that here in the US. So what we're describing, or others are spinning to you, is absolutely not socialist success. A boutique with a magnificent inheritance, ooh, that oil field, hydrocarbons. And an inheritance is the one thing no ideology can replicate. Here is the tell everyone quietly knows. Watch where the world's capital actually flows. Investors from every nation on earth, Norway, of course included, send their money to American markets. Capital is the most honest voter alive. No ideology, no hashtags, no shame. It goes where this all effectively gets built. And for a century, it has voted overwhelmingly for one address. When a man or woman hands you an alibi, check where the alibi, how about keeps its own money? Norway keeps its money effectively in America. The prosecution's star witness, banks with the defendant. And while we're on the subject of building, I mean, I don't want to keep on pounding upon Europe. Some amazing things that I love so much about Europe. But where, I mean, there's going to be some exceptions, Sweden and others. Where are some of the groundbreaking companies in the last decades coming from? No. From Europe. I know there's exceptions. I like Spotify, Minecraft. Yeah, sure. Wonderful. It's not the engine of entrepreneurship and driving the way that the US is. I mean, if I had to name America's, like the phone in your pocket, the search engine, the everything store, the chips, the rockets, the artificial intelligence. Nearly every of the largest companies on earth built here, most within living memory, several in garages, the society that let builders build and keep a majority of the upside, the society that lectures them, doesn't build them, lectures them, they get the museum. Act 4, the machine and the rewards failure. Now consider the proposed management. The pitch does not arrive alone. It arrives with an operator, the government. And the operator has an existing book of business, examine how it runs while for what it already controls. Last fiscal year, the federal government here in the US collected about $5.2 trillion. It spent $7 trillion. For every dollar the US government takes in from citizens who earned it, it spends roughly $1.35 and borrows the remainder in peacetime at effectively full employment. No enterprise in this room can survive those economics for a decade. This management has run them for a generation. And its response to every shortfall here in the US, and I'm kicking the US in the butt too, every response is never to spend less, it is to take more. And of course, print. Just print your problems away, meaning in dollars. And understand the taking has succeeded somewhat brilliantly. Federal revenue stands at an all-time record. Did you understand that? Up roughly 70% in a decade. No government in the history of governments has been richer. It ran the deficit anyway. So let us retire permanently the fiction that Washington has a revenue problem. Washington has a spending addiction. And every tax the rich campaign is an addict explaining that this fix will be the last one. Government is the worst capital allocator in the history of capital. The only allocator on earth who loses entitled to the larger fund. The interest, meanwhile, the interest on that debt has come due. For the first time in American history, interest on debt crossed well over $1 trillion in a single year. We now pay more to service past spending than to defend our country. By the way, look at history. That does not have a good outcome. That is not a budget. This is a margin call. This is a margin call in slow motion. So when this operator proposes expansion, into your healthcare, your housing, your energy, your groceries here in New York City, the question asks itself, you lose $1.35 on every dollar of revenue in your existing lines, and your growth strategy is more lines? Why does the machine run this way? Not because the people are wicked, I don't think, but because its incentives are inverted. And no one ever in history, probably my favorite economist, no one states this better than Thomas Sowell, for the excellent reason that he discovered them from the inside. If you don't know who Thomas Sowell is, go look him up and learn. Sowell, as a young one, was a Marxist, actually into his 20s. A brilliant young economist out of Harlem, entirely sold on the pitch. What cured into his 20s Thomas Sowell? It was a summer inside the government, studying the minimum wage. He noticed the evidence suggesting the policy was pricing the poorest workers out of work. Then he noticed something actually way worse. The agency did not want to know. Its budget, its headcount, its very existence depended on the program continuing. The truth was a threat to the payroll. That summer, he grasped what he would spend 60 years explaining. The great Thomas Sowell. For the bureaucrat, procedure is everything. and outcomes are nothing. I could stand on that alone and stop this video. I wish it was my words. It's not. It's Thomas Sowell. Again, for the bureaucrat, procedure is everything and outcomes are nothing. A business that fails its customer, entrepreneur, what happens? It dies. And that discipline, the discipline of that exit, its entire moral technology of the market. A bureaucracy that fails its purpose receives a larger budget, failure being its best evidence that it needs one. In your world, failure is a signal. In theirs, it's actually a strategy. And no reform or personnel can touch it because the personnel are downstream of the incentive. Now, yes, there was a comment that came in. Angelo, has the American government ever bailed out companies? Yes, and I personally do not like that. But yes, it has happened, including going back to 2008. And I don't know if you're hearing some things around what's happening with AI. It looks like the US government will perhaps step in and figure out a way to help there. So, hey, again, I hit the US pretty hard for a good percentage of this, and bureaucracy is absolutely, and the swamp and everything negative and many challenges here in the US, this absolutely relates. And this will play into my continuing story as I build into my acts here and take a look at some of my show notes, which does lead me into Act 5, the rehearsal city, all of which a skeptic might dismiss as history. So come with me, if you want, a little bit to my perspective in New York City. Understand what the New York City socialist inherited, sure, roughly 40% of the city on Medicaid, 1 in 5 on food stamps, hundreds of thousands in public housing, a third of its renters in stabilized units, an enormous share of the workforce paid by government or by government-funded nonprofits. Not good. Nearly 40% of New Yorkers born outside the US, and whatever your view on immigration, feed a dependency machine. That's what I care about. I don't care what color you are, your background, your origins, broken home. I want you to believe in the promise of America. I want you to believe in the promise of having a unifying culture or morality where, no, you're not given handouts by coming here. My ancestors weren't. Look at the history. Like, even a generation ago, from my perspective, family members working multiple jobs just to potentially give me the opportunity, which I did everything to blow and mess up. Everything. I can't quite say like Thomas Sowell. I'm not as smart as Thomas Sowell and his wonderful thoughts, but these are all the issues that I'm thinking through that are happening now. Like, you don't want to feed a dependency machine of arrivals. It does not mint citizens of the American dream. It mints clients. A city of 8 million running a budget, by the way, in the neighborhood of the entire state of Florida, a state of 23 million. New York was not just seduced by socialism. New York was already a dependency machine, and the machine at last selected its own operating system. With nearly half a city lives on transfers, the candidate promising more transfers is not radical. He is logical in their conclusion. Mark that arithmetic, because I guarantee you it's going to travel. Now, watch the operating system run. Like I said, about a week and a half ago, a brutal kind of holiday heat wave. Heat index above 110, Central Park at 100 degrees for the first time in over a decade, 80,000 Con Ed customers dark in the outer boroughs, and Mayor Zohran Mamdani answered to the greatest city on earth was a post, set your air conditioner to 78 degrees. Turn off your lights, unplug what you can. His defenders produce their within hours. Mayors have maybe always asked for this. Republicans in Texas asked for it what appears to be every summer. And they are quite right. And they have missed their own point. That's the problem. That is not the defense. It's actually the indictment. 50 years of leaders begging citizens to sweat is 50 years of leaders who never built the grid. Heat in July, well, that's not a black swan. It's July. Innovation is the answer. Build. A serious civilization meets July kind of with generation sort of capacity. An unserious one meets it with a tweet. When an official instructs you to use less, he or she is confessing that the system has stopped producing more. That's the problem. Rationing is not a policy. Rationing is surrender. It's surrender with a press release. The politician's instinct is always control. The entrepreneur's is abundance. And every power plant ever built is a rebuttal. Should you wish to see where the rationing instinct leads once fully grown, well, we have a great example. Again, look to Europe. Every summer, heat rolls across among, well, one of the wealthiest continents in history and kills on scale Americans actually can't even comprehend. A single bad summer like this one may put the toll into the tens of thousands, mostly elderly, mostly indoors. Grandmothers effectively, like the heat, like killing them in their own apartments. And the cure. The cure was invented in America in 1902. It's called air conditioning. 90% of American homes have it. In Europe, it's about 20%. Not because Europeans are poor, but because a political culture that classifies energy as a sin and comfort as a decadence spent 50 years making cool air scarce. So when that heat arrives, the official counsel is to endure tens of thousands, funerals filed under virtue. That is the 78-degree instinct at maturity. And New York, the thermostat is actually the least of it. The mayor's signature policy is freezing rents. Run it as an operator. Since apparently no one in City Hall can. Real estate is a high operating leverage business. Freeze the revenue while what? Insurance, property taxes, repairs, utilities inflate, carpenters and electricians aren't charging less, and the cash flow does not merely sag, it turns negative after debt service. So owners stop investing. Then they stop maintaining. They hand back the keys. Know the history. I'm old enough. The Bronx, late 60s through the 70s and early 80s. It was horrific. I'll tell you that from some level of firsthand experience. Horrific. Owners effectively, like I stated, stop investing, stop maintaining, and they hand back the keys. The housing does not become fairer. It decays, then it becomes abandoned, whereupon the city arranges to acquire the wreckage. It is the oldest sequence in the repertoire. Break the market with controls, blame the market for breaking. Nationalize the rubble. New York is performing it in real time with the city. Owned grocery stores are what? Probably the next act up. Because nothing promises fresh produce like the same management that runs the DMV. Now, read the roster, because this is a movement, not a man, not just a man. And it stopped concealing its name. It's right there. The DSA, the Democratic Socialist of America. Socialism is on the letterhead. Swept New York's congressional primaries 2 weeks ago behind the mayor's endorsement, and 3 of his candidates bound for Congress, like I stated earlier. Learn the names. They will be voting on your taxes and much else in the coming years. Claire Valdez of Queens, whose stated hot take on tape is to nationalize the entire airline industry. Begin by abolishing pre-check, work up to the government flying the planes. She closed her victory speech with a call to abolish ICE and for you to join the DSA. Oh, and she's crushing it, and there's many more. Darazila Chevalier of Harlem, the historic capital of Black American achievement, who toppled a 5-term incumbent, the sitting chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, carrying a documented record of defending her own calls to abolish the police, abolish prisons, and opposing deportation as a category, and helping lead the University of Columbia occupation alongside a campus group that went on to call for the death of America. When reporters, shockingly, even surfaced her deleted posts sympathizing with communism, she went on national TV to clarify, oh, not a communist, but that is what she is, a democratic socialist. Now, maybe we could pause a little bit on that sentence. In the year 2026, the fresh face of governing party of America's largest city is drawing a distinction between herself and communism and inviting you to find the distinction reassuring. 60 years ago, 100 million corpses made that word unspeakable in American politics. One generation, that's all it is. One generation forgetting has made it really a clarification. Now, yes, I appreciate the comments coming in, some good, some bad, and perhaps to be bifurcating, perhaps to hear from both sides of the audience. Try to be constructive with why you think I may be wrong would be more helpful than admitting your victimhood and challenges. I could have played that game as well. Half Latino, broken home, never really went to college, squandered opportunities that were available to me early. Like, when do I stop playing the victim and be accountable for what I think and the actions that I take from that, with no guarantees it's going to lead to perhaps a level of success that I might want? Hey, I'm an older guy. I'm way into my back nine. If I go by actuarial standards, I got 16 years left. So sure, I'm fortunate enough to have a little bit of a platform to share my views, which I would have members that would probably at least partially disagree with me. And I'm okay with that because no one else in my community, I know no one in the family office community is going to open their mouth from either perspective, because that's effectively just not what they do. It is what it is. I'm wired a little differently in finance and family office circles. So, and spare me, finally, the framing of all of this is people rising up against the ruling class. In the last presidential election, the Democrats, the party this movement is annexing, raised far more money than the Republicans, not marginally. The donor class, the credential class, the institutional class banks overwhelmingly with the party of seize the means. The ruling class knows precisely which party is its own. Abolish the police, abolish prisons is not a working class agenda. Ask a working man or woman who lives near a prison. Is the agenda for an over-credentialed elite that wishes the taxpayer to fund its resentments. And I talked about this in my first video on this 2 weeks ago, an overproduction of elites. Too many people in universities not even doing real teaching. We're going to get to some of that and aspects of who's behind that with proof relatively shortly. In degrees that are not valuable in today's world moving forward. Not at all valuable. And no, these are not fringe candidates who might win. They are nominees, like taking safe seats. The general election is a formality. The question is no longer whether the pitch can win in America. Like, apparently it can. The question is whether anyone with resources will contest the next round, what I call Act 6, the subsidy. One final ledger that no one reads out loud. Who pays for the pitch? Ideas this bad do not spread on merit. And I'm all about meritocracy. They are subsidized from two directions, and you have been paying into it while probably ignoring the other. Let us begin with their own money. For 60 years, the foreign aid apparatus, USAID, at its center, spent tens of billions of your tax dollars annually. And here's what the actual audit found along the way. This is the agency, the Associated Press, the liberal Associated Press, caught secretly building a fake social network in Cuba, a covert political operation in a humanitarian costume built to you. And it grew a global NGO ecosystem constituting the most perfect specimen of Thomas Sowell's law ever assembled. An industry whose budget depends entirely upon poverty persisting. A poverty industrial complex that solved poverty would be out of business reliably. Therefore, it does not look to solve it. It administers it. Procedure is everything. Outcomes are nothing. Nothing. What happens when smart people who are incentivized to take a risk and start a business? Governments, you feel it's so easy, you do it. People who play the victim, who are resentful, do you have it in you to forego a paycheck and to build something where the odds are stacked against you? So people that bring in tax revenue, again, top 1%, 40%, top 10%, about 70%, and a good majority of Americans effectively don't pay any taxes at all. You're going to motivate them to go to a different state and to leave, taking their intellect, what they're building, their tax revenue, their likely more local philanthropic dollars, and what they support if they're still active in a company with employees and their communities. Oh, so where is the government going to get money from? Where is the state going to generate money from? And this all relates to some issue of bailouts and some of the issues I'm talking about now with USAID and effectively NGOs. It's a very intertwined ecosystem. I was hoping Doge would do more. It looked like it got off to a roaring start, and then, I don't know, the apparatus even got to the current sitting president, where apparently didn't go far enough, reversed even some things they were originally doing that might have been good well over a year ago from that perspective. So like I was saying, a poverty industrial complex that solved poverty would be out of business. Again, procedure is everything, outcomes nothing. 60 years and trillions of dollars, and the 2 billion souls who actually escaped extreme poverty in our lifetime were lifted by markets, by trade and property rights and entrepreneurs, not by agencies that are holding press conferences. Last year, as I hinted at, Washington kind of shut that machine down. Observe what followed. Look, the loudest grief came not from the world's poor, but the credentialed class whose careers it funded. If we're building government, having people take useless degrees in college so they could then work for an entity without producing anything, what does a government produce? I want a government to provide safety, which includes its borders, law and order, local policing, a strong national defense. I get it. You have to have some regulatory bodies and agencies, but I want the opportunity to be successful, to be driven by my passions, to be motivated. I don't know, as a high testosterone male, that I could achieve a level of success if I put myself out there and I grind and I work hard. If I get up at 5 o'clock, if I'm grinding it to 11 or 12, I'm learning from my mistakes and failures because I have the opportunity to do something great. And being an entrepreneur and having a product or a service, if I'm successful, that means I'm providing value because I'm having clients, customers that are into my service or product. It keeps the engines, the mechanisms, it keeps them going. Entrepreneurs are the lifeblood of the economy and the country. So I mentioned the loudest grief came from the world's, not from the world's poor, but that credential class whose careers it funded. Judge a program by who mourns it, and look south while you're at it across Latin America. The voters who actually lived under the left's patronage economies are evicting them and electing market radicals with chainsaws. Look at Malay. Like, that is the outbound subsidy. Your taxes exporting the ideology. And now the inbound, because your children, your grandchildren did not compose these opinions alone in a dormitory. Run the diligence no one has run on limited partners of American higher education. And that is where, as we take this to the home stretch, I really want to pound this one home. The single largest foreign funder of American colleges and universities. I said foreign funder. It's not Britain. It's not Germany. It's not even China. It's Qatar. $6.6 billion disclosed, more than $1 billion in the last year alone, roughly a fifth of all foreign money flowing into American campuses, with a single Ivy League university taking above $2 billion. One single Ivy League university. A Gulf monarchy, an absolute state writing the largest foreign checks into the institutions that form the American elite, the same institutions where your heirs learn what to think of. Because God forbid, people learn to think for themselves. And maybe the young mind, with a combination of parents and teachers, mentors, obviously then heading into universities, you know, you can meld them. Oh, I would like to go deeper on that one, but let me be a bit of a good boy today. No, I don't want my mind. And I was a little bit more resistant to this kind of shit, although not that I put myself as much in that situation. Even then, when I was doing stupid things and things I wish that I could go back and would have had some different direction and initiatives, at least I knew better than that. Now, I will say only what the documents support, and it is sufficient. No state on earth deploys billions into foreign universities without expecting a return. Am I right about that? You know this better than anyone alive. You have never written a check as an investor or family office without a thesis. So the question is not whether a campus culture is for sale. The receipts say it's sold. The question is why the American families with the most at stake allow a foreign monarchy to outbid them for their own children and grandchildren's minds while funding the same institutions through the annual gala and calling it philanthropy. You interrogate counterparties on what, a $50 million deal while investing, blind in the formation of your own heirs, besides a limited partner whose thesis you have never read. It is the most negligent position in your entire portfolio. There's a quiet side to the story. So concluding my near 1 hour. A founder who never built anything, financed by the system, indicted, was going after. A track record of 100 launches, no exits, and 100 million graves, where the testimonial should be. An alibi that is secretly long America. An operator that loses $1.35 for every dollar in recorded revenue. A rehearsal city, New York, rationing electricity and freezing rents. Reinforcements confirmed for Congress. And a subsidy flowing from both directions, your own taxes going out, a monarchy's billions coming in. And an analyst on your team stamps this decline before lunch. And it's winning precisely and only because the people equipped to say this out loud have decided that saying anything, either they're too ignorant or what is it beneath them? Why should a family office care? I told you last time, the gravest threat to a fortune is never a bad investment, but an heir who receives the money and the shame that they perceive in the same envelope, taught by everyone except you, that the family story is a crime. That argument stands tonight. Its second half, which I have given you. Many of you are not merely allocators of capital, you're allocators of courage. Every family may be watching this broadcast. A position, whether it's intended or not. Silence is a position. The gala smile is a position. Financing your own delegitimization because the letterhead said philanthropy is a position. Margaret Thatcher, going back to the UK here in the 80s, Margaret Thatcher warned that socialists eventually run out of other people's money. Margaret Thatcher warned that socialists eventually run out of other people's money. But before they run out of your money, they run on your silence. The pitch does not require your agreement. It requires really only your absence, which is the majority of you. While someone else raises your heirs, our children, it is getting it. 70 years ago, one man decided that absence was over. His name was William F. Buckley. He was 29 years old at the time, in command of a magazine that no one read. Back when people even read magazines, he wasn't being read. When he announced that it would stand a third history yelling stop at the precise cultural movement when every sophisticated person knew collectivism was inevitable, and opposing it, they said, was vulgar. He possessed a fraction of the resources of the smallest family office. What he possessed instead, I guess, was more valuable: nerve and standards. He made the argument with wit rather than a whine and policed his own side's cranks, which of course there's going to be. He was harsh on them, ruthless, that serious minds could at last afford to join it. One person, one magazine, within a generation, the inevitable ideas were rubble, and his were governing. That is what a single allocation of courage returns compounded. Ideas will not defend themselves. They can't. They are defended. They are defended by people with means and, really more importantly, a spine. And no room on earth holds more means than the high-level entrepreneurs and family offices, my target market. Fund the scholars, endow the arguments, back the builders, please, the grid, the abundance agenda, and do the one thing that no check can outsource. Sit down with your own children, grandchildren, your family. Sit down while I apparently take care of my alarm, reminding me that my hour's practically up. Tell them what it took, the risk, the nights, the payroll, the people who ate because you did not quit. Give them the mission, or the culture will issue them the shame. I promise you. I've been in the family office community for many decades. I travel the world. I see it all, the good and the bad. And there's a lot of bad. Those are the only two options. And culture, don't forget, you're fighting a tough one. And how I position it and what I'm defining here has never missed a payment. And you doubt that a mind can be won back? No, you're wrong. Remember the young Marxist from Harlem who would become the iconic economist Thomas Sowell. The Marxist from Harlem, the same Harlem that just nominated effectively a communist. No one canceled Thomas Sowell out of communism. No one shamed him out. Evidence got him out. One honest summer, watching the machine from the inside. Harlem produced the century's greatest defector from the idea, and it can produce the next one. And so, for that matter, can you at your dinner table. This is the most hopeful fact I know. The argument is winnable simply because it's true, and truth is the one asset that compounds without your management fees. You are not on the losing side of history. We are actually on the quiet side. Those are a different problem. And the second one, the quiet side, I think is fixable, including with me here with you now. As I said, the pitch has had 200 years, including here in the US, the tiny city in Indiana that I gave you, 100 countries, 100 million graves, a monarchy's marketing budget that we're seeing in our US universities, and every conceivable advantage. And it has never survived one honest hour. So give it the hour in your family meetings, at the dinner table, perhaps in public, under your own name. Don't be afraid to stand up and speak out. You interrogate everything else you love. Why not start in terms of with our civilization? Yeah, there's brother, I can't quite see your name here on YouTube. By the way, I wish you the best. Like that, I don't know if you're a bot, you're a communist somewhere. Like, what have you ever done? What have you ever built? Have you employed people? Do you have a family? Do you support people? Like, you're playing the victim. It's embarrassing so hard. I had every conceivable thing against me. Minority, not having a father figure, other challenges which I'll keep to myself. And I'm far from being very successful, depending on how you would potentially define that. I didn't let my setbacks set me back. I didn't go out looking for handouts. I struggled. I struggled mightily, actually well into my late 30s into early 40s. I had businesses that I tried, and they just didn't make it. That was no one's fault. It was all on me. All on me. I learned, I'm resilient, and I march forward. Who knows what will happen? It could be a disaster for me tomorrow. I could get hit by a bus. I don't know what could happen, but I don't go on hiding behind a keyboard. The world is against me. What did I say? Strong, weak people think the world is against them, and they might be right, but strong people don't give a damn if it is. They don't give a damn. I know if I'm still alive in 10 years, I don't know, maybe my investments in my businesses fail. I gave it all I got. I go out on my high horse. I gave it what I got. And maybe that wasn't enough. I don't look to blame everyone. I don't want the government to be my daddy. I'm a damn libertarian. I want freedom. I want an opportunity. I want an equal opportunity, which debatably in my younger years, I did not get. Again, you have a point. Weak people think the world is against them and might partially be right. Strong people have to push through that. Push through that. I have many other things I would like to say. And in person and at some of my events, I go into deeper detail, sharing the journey I learned from successful people, and sharing insights that I can't really do in more of a public forum like this, which are very blunt and very direct. Yeah, I'm a different breed, I guess you could say, in the family office world. I've been in it for years. I have a level of credibility and success that perhaps allows me to be more outspoken and open-minded. I don't have investors in what I do now. I have no board to answer to. Sure, I have members in relationships, and probably occasionally some of them don't like all of my messages. Actually, by far, my largest family, one of the largest relationships or families on earth, has a pretty different political perspective than mine. But they appreciate that I speak my truth, that I challenge their assumptions, and I really, really helped them on one issue where I did that. That had nothing to do with investments or money, and a lot to do with some of the issues, although perhaps some indirect, that I spoke about today. like people calling Elon Musk stupid, ignorant, you're embarrassing yourself. I may not really like Bill Gates and some of the things he does too much, but is that guy smart? Come on. He built something that I'll never build anywhere near as big of. Bill Gates is very smart and an incredible entrepreneur. I do not have to agree with his political perspective to admit that fact and admit there are things that I could learn from him. And you're telling me that Elon Musk, at minimal, if not the world's greatest entrepreneur, probably the greatest capital allocator and builder, and doing things that are so future forward looking. Again, everyone, and you'll notice this more in YouTube and some of the other platforms, bots, people in their basements, I have no idea. I have no idea how old they are. That attitude, that's going to make you successful. And successful doesn't mean that you're making millions of dollars a year per se, although money can buy you a percentage of freedom. That is true. You have optionality for fluidity, flexibility where you live, and being motivated to make money. And to do that by having those freedoms is one of the greatest powers of money. So sure, that does have real value, but I define it by my family, my commitment, my relationship with a higher up in God, the value that I provide in community, how I help entrepreneurs. And again, I have failures every day, every darn day. I try to get better. Sometimes I do, and sometimes I make the same mistake over and over. I'm not afraid to be an outspoken voice in the world of finance and family offices. So, sure, I'll get back to creating a family office, investment opportunities. Tomorrow I have on the world's greatest macro strategist. We'll always do deep dives in AI, geopolitics, which relates to some of the subjects from today. But I think every now and then, with what I see here, with the rise of AOC, Ro Khanna, Elizabeth Warren, Mamdani, the new Congress people coming in, and just admitting, at least they're admitting, DSA, Democratic Socialist of America, really mean communist, but socialist has a softer word. And younger people, again, getting indoctrinated in colleges, and we went over a little bit of that today. I mean, I guess, like I said, in my younger 20s, I probably skewed a little bit more to that perspective as well. We have a lot of work to do. There seems to be a lot of fracture, not enough listening. And I'm more than happy to listen to the other side. And maybe there is something that they could teach me. I come pretty well prepared in history, in understanding socialism and communism, and understanding that builders, creators get things done. Okay, everyone, I have a lot of things to do, and you will do as well. Tomorrow, I have again who I think is the world's greatest macro strategist. Tonight, I'll make an announcement across my socials. If you want to come on live tomorrow, great. If not, unless something goes wrong, I guess it will be recorded. It'll be an hour and a half. Technically have 81 questions. We'll probably get to about 30 of them. I'll try to pick the best 30, involve many of you. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you all for your time today.